Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. I am so glad that you're here. Today I'll be painting a mushroom in a very dreamy moss covered forest with acrylic paint. Before we get too carried away with our topic today, I'll go over my process very quickly. First, I draw a 1-inch grid on my canvas, and I draw the areas of high contrast and my subject. I'm careful to include everything that I want to be shown in the painting. I go over, you'll see here, with a layer of burnt sienna. I'm careful to fill in all of those white specks that are left behind with the texture of the canvas, and I like to do this because it gives my painting a warm glow and it covers the whites, kills the white of the canvas. It's a little bit less daunting, and personally, to me, it is much more appealing to paint on. Earlier you saw me go in with Micron over a gessoed canvas. With this video I realized that Micron is apparently not waterproof when it's drawn on gesso, and so it reactivated when I went over with the burnt sienna. So I will not be doing that again, and just so everyone is aware, in case you are curious and want to give it a try, don't do it. But just like with gouache, I start with my darkest values first, and then I work my way up to lighter colors. Basically, I'm just trying to fill in the big shapes, and I can go in and layer and glaze as much as I want because acrylic is truly a beautiful medium. You don't have to worry about it reactivating, and you can put light over dark and dark over light with no issues. It also dries the same color that you put down, so there's no color shift. Truly, it's a wonderful medium. So if you are on the fence about it, I highly suggest you give it a try. So this is going to be one of the first forest floor paintings that I have shared on YouTube so far. I did do one with chipmunks a few months ago, but that was like my very first step, I guess, in the right direction. This is like, that painting was like dipping my toes into forest floor paintings, and this is something that I have just completely just embraced wholeheartedly, and my work has definitely evolved since that painting. I have maybe done 6 or 7 paintings that I just haven't recorded, and so this is something that I really love to do. But I've been super inspired by the forest floor and the mushrooms that grow there. Since I paint from my own references, that means I have to go to the woods and find these mushrooms, so it's like an adventure every day. And I've learned a lot about the mushrooms and the plants that are native to the Adirondacks, but each time I stumble on a mushroom, it's like witnessing a little magical world. It's like a pocket of fairy dust or something. It's just so beautiful. I went for a walk nearby yesterday, and it truly never gets old whenever you find a mushroom on the trail. It's just so exciting, and I'm always looking for little critters and stuff that accompany the mushrooms. There's always something, whether it be a bug or snails or who knows what. There's always something with the mushroom that just elevates the magic. I've noticed that there's a lot of slugs on the mushrooms, which totally would have grossed me out a long time ago, but now that I'm stepping into their world and I'm seeing a tiny glimpse of their lives, they're really beautiful. Very quickly, my perspective has changed, and I've begun to appreciate these tiny pockets of wonder as intricate beauty. Like, these are tiny little lives that are so overlooked, and people typically don't see this part of nature. Each time I stumble on one of these tiny little worlds, these little ecosystems, these mushrooms, I question myself, why am I so drawn to painting the forest floor and the mushrooms? And honestly, I've been thinking about that for a long time. I don't think I have the answer just yet, but let me ask you, have you ever seen the movie Fern Gully? If you haven't, I highly recommend it. Growing up, it was one of my all-time favorite movies ever. And as an adult, looking back, the artwork and the way that they zoomed in and focused on the intricate, tiny little plants and animals of the forest floor is exactly what I like to draw in paints. The main characters are fairies and small animals, and they put a lot of emphasis on the small parts of the forest that are usually overlooked. Anyways, I think that movie might have put a tiny pin of inspiration in my baby artist brain that has laid dormant until now. Once we take notice of something that we previously overlooked, I think it's important to bring it to other people's attention so that they can respect it too. Does that make sense? I don't know. The majority of people are focusing on their own stuff. Not everyone is inspecting mushrooms in their free time, but once it's brought to someone's attention through art or whatever means, it changes their perspective. It's really hard for me to articulate my reason for these paintings, other than just saying that I think that they're beautiful. There is something like in my heart that tells me I should be painting these little mushrooms, and I just have not quite figured out why, other than I'm heavily inspired whenever I'm painting a forest floor piece. I think at the end of the day, what I'm trying to say is that the average person is typically not thinking about nature or the forest floor, so when they see paintings like this, it might bring them joy and that they didn't know that they were missing something. So about a year ago, I moved. That's Lupin in the background, he's grumbly. But about a year ago, I moved from farmlands to the mountains. And while I've always had love and respect for nature, now that I'm surrounded by the mountains and lakes and streams, rivers, and all the beautiful wildlife, I'm absolutely fascinated. It truly is like stepping into some sort of forgotten magical world. Mushroom season in the Adirondacks is kind of fickle, so I really only have from like May until September, with mid-July until the end of August being the peak. Everything depends on weather too. We have to have enough rain and enough warm days without drying things up in order to have a good mushroom season. Mushrooms really like humid weather, and sometimes we do get a really humid summer. So far, we've been very lucky and we've had some really humid days, but there are also times when we don't get rain for weeks and things really start to dry up. I don't know if this is true, but I do remember reading somewhere the Adirondacks is considered like a rainforest of some sort. It's like a conifer hardwood rainforest. I don't know how accurate that is, but I do remember reading that somewhere. And we do get a lot of rain here, and we get a lot of snow and ice melt, so typically things are damp, but there are times and years when things really do dry up, and it's very sad. A lot of the animals suffer for it, so I'm really hoping that this year is not one of those years. I'm also in competition with wildlife. We have an absolute ton of deer in this area, and this time of year mushrooms are a big part of their diet. So as long as I can get to them for a photo, they can go ahead and eat them afterwards. I hope that this is something that you enjoyed watching. It is a little bit different compared to my portrait work, but this type of artwork is what really speaks to my heart. I'll always draw and paint portraits or whatever I feel like that day, but mushrooms and the forest floor will always be really special to me. I've had Entangled Life, that book. It's about mushrooms. I've had it recommended to me a whole lot. And I just recently got it delivered to my house yesterday. So I'm very excited to be starting that, and hopefully that'll help me pinpoint my reason for wanting to paint these things. I don't necessarily think that I need a reason other than visually I think that they're beautiful. But I feel like my message that things that are overlooked are just as valuable and important as the big things. When you think of nature and going out on nature walks or going on a hike, you think of a view at the end where you look out. Maybe you've like hiked a mountain. This is me personally, but if you've ever hiked a mountain and you get to the end and you're just really looking for a nice view and you see rolling hills and mountains, and that's the big thing, you know. Or even if you're like walking on a hike and you're appreciating the lake that's nearby or the trees that are growing, you're not looking down, you're not looking at the little tiny salamanders and newts that are running by, or the birds, or I don't know, whatever else lives on the floor. So it's incredibly fascinating to me to just kind of slow down, really take my time and look at these small, tiny lives. They're not small in the means of significance, they're small in size, but they are just as significant and just as important as any other creature living. Now that may make me sound like a hippie, and I don't care. I'm a hippie then, I guess, but I don't think that I think that just because they're small and just because they are typically unseen doesn't mean that they're not important. In fact, they may be more so important. I mean, fungus and mushrooms are the decomposers of the forest floor. They break down the trees that fall and anything that happens to pass away in the forest. And small, tiny creatures that accompany the mushrooms are the same way. They're also the decomposers of the forest floor. And there's just something about that is just so incredibly beautiful to me. It's the cycle of life and death, and how, I don't know, I feel like energy is just kind of transferred. But I don't know, I feel like when you step into the forest, there is just something so special about the air, and there's just this vibrancy, and it just makes the whole like air around you just like vibrate. That totally might just be me, and maybe I'm just a freak of nature. But I just cannot get over the feeling of being in the woods and smelling the earth, and just that fresh air that you get when you're in the woods is just unlike anything else. Anyways, I'll get back to the painting and my process. I like acrylic painting for many, many reasons, but there was a time when I was debating on if I should be doing acrylic painting or water mixable oils. Now, if you're new here, I have a lot of pets. I have 2 dogs and 2 cats, and they are just kind of all over me at all times. Like right now, Luna is sitting on my feet. Lupin is sitting right next to me as well. You'll probably hear him grumble in the background because that is what Lupin does. But typically I have a cat on my desk while I'm painting, and I just feel like oils are never going to be safe enough for me to paint with. I feel like they're always going to be super toxic. And I know that acrylic paint also is toxic, but I feel like it gives off way less fumes or bad vibes. So I really love acrylic. I'm fairly new to it. This is maybe like my 6th or 7th painting with acrylic. But it's really working for me, and I highly recommend it. I use the Utrecht artist grade paints. I saw that Maria Siswell uses them, and she was really the inspiration for me switching over to acrylic from gouache. I feel like gouache just didn't really have the vibrancy that I was looking for. So once I found her channel and I saw that she does these absolutely gorgeous paintings with acrylic paint, I researched that paint and I went ahead and I ordered some, and I have been stuck ever since. I cannot see myself painting a mushroom painting like this again with gouache. Just, there's something truly beautiful about the vibrancy that these paints give. At this point in the painting, I have filled everything in for the most part, and now I'm just nitpicking. And this is my favorite way to go about things, is I like to just throw color down on the canvas, put some basic shapes in there until it reads the way I want it to. And then I will go ahead and go back and I will glaze on top to get the right color that I want, or vibrancy in the paint that I want. And then I go over again with my tiny little details. You'll see that here with this section of the painting when I'm going in with just that tiny little square brush, and I'm putting in those little details in the ferns and in the moss. And this is just a general idea of what that texture is. Obviously you can totally get lost in the details. There is so much going on in these paintings that it can be really hard to decide what's important and what's not. So I'm just going through, I'm picking out pieces that I like and what I don't like. I try and hide away, but it's all just a constant, I don't know, checks and balances and ebbs and flows, I guess. I'm just always going through and adjusting. My favorite part of a painting are the final touches, and typically that's like a highlight here and there, but in this case it's dirt and little specks of dirt, and this is just so much fun to me. I was dying to add these little specks in the whole time, and I'm very proud of myself for putting it off until the very end. So we're nearing the end of this video. I hope that you enjoyed this. It was a little bit different than what we usually talk about and what I usually paint. I hope that you're open to seeing more work like this, and I hope I didn't scare you off with my hippie hippie statements. That's my messy palette and the finished painting. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you guys next time.